All right, so jumping into module 2, but before we do that, as promised, I would review the answers to the labs from module 1. And so you'll see those here. There again, a lot of you have tried these, but the problem was it was either a spelling issue or a space issue or whatever. So if you tried these answers but didn't capitalize or something else, it would have counted it wrong. But those are the answers for lab 1. Got points on lab 1, right? All right, cool. So let's go to this week. This week, you guys will have another lab. We'll have this content out of here. There is quite a bit of content today, so we're just going to get through again the stuff that matters. Don't expect me to click on every slide. There's 83 slides. I'm not clicking on every slide. All right. So let's see, slideshow from the beginning. Cool, that's wrong. Let's try that again. There we go. All right. One clicker. Clicker. There we go. All right, so this whole section is kind of giving you an overview of cyber threats and what we are looking for when we are in the SOC. And so in the digital area, cyber threats are going to constantly jeopardize our confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Does anybody remember what that's called? Those 3 words together? CIA. Not that CIA, but a different CIA. It's the CIA triad, and that's usually what refers to us in the IT space. Our 3 main goals: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And I say the IT space because in the OT world, where operations technology, think critical infrastructure, things like that, they have a much slightly different approach than the CIA triad. Theirs is more focused on availability. So the origins of those cyber threats to date, early computing, blah, blah, blah. Let's focus on the actual classifications. So things like malware is going to be important to us. Again, malware, while it's very diverse, is an exploit of a computer system vulnerabilities. This includes the viruses, the worms, Trojans, ransomware, spyware, etc. We have phishing attacks. These are used as deceptive tactics to trick people into revealing sensitive information through fraudulent emails, websites, or messages. Our distributed denial of service attack, or DDoS attack, is used to overwhelm some kind of system with excessive traffic, therefore making it unavailable. This could be done through botnets or compromised devices that will amplify that attack, causing financial loss or damage to online services. And our insider threat, believe it or not, this is more common than anything else, whether it's accidental or on purpose. Insider threats involve individuals within an organization looking to exploit access privileges for malicious purposes. This includes intentional actions like espionage, as well as malicious intent from routine behavior. All right. Impact of those cyber threats, we can deal with financial loss. We have data breaches, disruption of critical infrastructure. There again, on the critical infrastructure side, we're looking at stuff like energy, healthcare, transportation as prime targets for those cyber attacks and severe consequences for public safety. And then, of course, at the national level, we have national security threats. These are escalating cyber threats that pose significant national security risks, including state-sponsored cyber attacks. So vulnerabilities within cybersecurity are the things we need to look after. Software vulnerabilities. These are unpatched software that's inadequate coding practices or use of outdated applications. We have the human factor, which is all of our social engineering tactics, such as phishing, pretexting, manipulating individuals, etc. And then on your Internet of Things security, inadequate safety measures, often with these devices. Primarily in the early days, they could not be updated once they were sent out. That wasn't the best design ever. but they're still out there. And we'll go through a couple of resources to look at things like Internet of Things security, particularly with Shodan and some other resources. Some best practices, obviously making sure that we're using encryption as a mechanism for protecting the data, network security, including IDS, IPS, using VPNs, and network segmentation in order to try to split the network up. Our incident response and recovery, this is where it's critical for you guys to follow through, and that's developing a comprehensive incident response plan for minimizing the impact of any cyber attack. So just finding it from a technical perspective is one thing, but we got to have a plan in place. When this happens, we are going to do this. And that plan is usually the hardest part, right? You got to have that plan. You will massage the plan, change the plan over time. But if you don't have that and you can't take swift action, that's when things go south, right? Not everybody can just sit there and panic because the red lights are going off. We got to have an action plan. There's some new emerging threats and future challenges. We have the AI and machine learning within cyber attacks. This is actually getting pretty awesome. Using AI or machine learning as ways to leverage for the attackers and or defenders. And it can help automate and optimize malicious activities, making them more sophisticated and challenging to detect. But it also gives us on the IDS side where we can detect things much, much quicker than we could in the past, right? So we'll automatically be generating new signatures while everything's actually coming through. The ability to have quantum computing arriving, which traditional cryptographic algorithms, this prepares for a whole new era in there. And yes, that's a real thing, quantum computing. I actually got to talk with a gentleman that was doing that with NASA. That was pretty interesting. He's got some pretty big background in the quantum side. International cooperation in cybersecurity. This is pretty crucial as we're having to share that collective response of everything coming in because of all the complexities. Now, obviously, we're not sharing everything because we have state-sponsored attacks going both directions. U.S. attacking other people and other people attacking the U.S., among many other countries out there. Anybody ever fell victim to ransomware? No? Little fish, nobody has a big bank account?
My school did at one point, but that's about it.
So ransomware attacks are getting more and more prevalent. This is by where the ransomware will encrypt the victim's files, rendering them inaccessible. They'll then demand some ransom from a cryptocurrency for decrypting those keys and restoring access. It will evolve in sophistication and pose as a constant challenge for cybersecurity. The attack starts with phishing emails or malicious links. The victim's interactions allow the ransomware infiltration, and the core lies in encrypting files and making data recovery difficult for victims. After encryption, attackers deliver the ransom notes with payment details, and the note warns of data recovery attempts without paying for the ransom, facing urgency going through. A lot of times they'll encrypt all of your data, then do that. If they're smart, they'll actually sniff out where you're doing your backups and encrypt your backups as well. The problem is a lot of people do just that. They leave, back it up to this NFS storage or something, right? Well, if your servers can hit it, well, so can the malware going through there. So a lot of times in the firewalls and stuff, we'll set very narrow windows for those things to have access during backup windows. And that's the only time they have access to that equipment. Therefore, they would have to do it during a backup. This is bringing the resurgence of things like tape backup, which is not a hard drive, but a physical tape drive that you would stick in, get the backups on it, pull it out, stick it in cold storage, literally cold storage, because tape drives don't like much above about 105 degrees, if I remember right, something like that, and it'll destroy itself. So. All right, impact of that, it can obviously disrupt operations, things like frequent attacks. I think you guys all understand ransomware. Anybody not understand ransomware? It's pretty big. It's been in the news. You guys have seen it. I think Hayes High hit some of this as well at some point. They were mostly DDoS attacks, but we've seen ransomware show up as well. All right, so what is their intent? What's their motive? What's their goal? a lot of what you're going to read in this is trying to understand the mind of what an attacker is trying to do, why they're taking over the network. So they're either stealing sensitive information, looking to just disrupt operations or services, and gain unauthorized access to the systems for control or manipulation down the road, and even espionage or surveillance from other companies. Some will do it for financial gain. Some are doing it for some political motivation. This could be ideological or a hacktivist motivation. Anybody name a group that would be something like that? They've got the standard hoodie and the white face. Anonymous. There you go. Anonymous would fall under that hacktivist motivation. So they're driven by something like ideological beliefs, seeking to promote some kind of specific cause or agenda. You know, whether it was you are a insurance company that failed to all the people, et cetera, they're going to go in and then hack the insurance company and release whatever information on the inside. Competitive advantage. Yes, this happens where companies are hiring hackers to attack the other opposition in order to gain strategic advantage. And then some just do it for thrill seeking or malicious intent, where they're just looking to go in and cause a bunch of harm. All right. We see data theft, service disruption. All these are considered cyber crimes, including political influence and monetary extortion. On an email compromise, you're going to see something like this, where you have a target system. The attacker will then use some kind of phishing attempt to gain unauthorized email. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's a big surge of it lately coming into both Fort Hays accounts as well as personal accounts. And the goal is that they're going to sit there and monitor communications, collecting data on finances or even personal stuff, send that up, impersonating executives. I don't know how many times the dean wants to give me a quick call. It's not true. All right. And looking for fraudulent fund transfers. And then once they have compromised accounts, employees will send that kind of stuff out. All right. This is getting easier and easier to do because we can now scrape things like websites and Facebook and everything else, do a bunch of social engineering so we can make you think it is that person as much as possible. So how do they go about this? Tactics are going to use high-level objectives in a cyber attack, including guiding a threat actor strategy, something like data exfiltration, aiming to steal sensitive data. There's a bunch of different ways to get that data out of a system, and they can hide that going through the firewalls if they're not using advanced firewalls. For example, they could package it up in little DNS packets going out. Most firewalls aren't going to block DNS requests. Why would we not want to block DNS requests? What is DNS?
Almost everything relies on it.
Right. What's everything?
Websites.
You got it. Going to websites, browsing, everything usually goes to a URL, right? Not very many of you type in the IP address to go to a website. And why is that?
Security.
Security, one.
Lock down your IP, right? Like find where you are.
Yep. We could find out where you are based off geospatial. What else?
It's hard to do HTTPS. It's just annoying to memorize a ton of IP addresses.
Mostly because you got a lot of services hosted from different places now too, right? So used to be able to plug in an IP address, that was where it's hosted, you're good to go. Now we got load balancers and distribution across multiple data centers across the US. Things are going to go in different places. So we can't really lock down a lot of DNS requests, which means what these guys have done smartly is they will package it as DNS requests going outbound over the same protocols, and therefore you wouldn't typically block it. Now, something like a Palo Alto or something like that will sniff that traffic and go, that's not DNS traffic, and start blocking it. Normal firewalls like the ones you guys have at your house, not so much. It'll just allow that traffic to go out. So some techniques that they do in that particular case, they're getting more detailed and describe those steps over a broad tactical advantage. Procedures are kind of outlining what they do to follow up for an attack and how you can get that data back or set it up. For data exfiltration, it could be something like doing reconnaissance on the person, doing malware delivery, setting up command and control or C2, that is where I set up where your computer is always going to phone back to me. So even if I remove everything that I ever did going through there, every time you fire up that machine, it's immediately going to phone home to me. So if you go to your home network, you go to your school network, doesn't matter. It's always phoning home back to me. And those are surprisingly easy to set up. You guys will do that in some of the labs as we go through here. Use it for good, not for bad. I saw you, Gage. All right, data exfiltration. He was smiling when he was like, we get to learn what? You got to be able to block it, so you got to learn how to do it. Tactical unauthorized access, exploiting those security software vulnerabilities and being able to pull that kind of code down. So whether you guys are writing exploits or taking advantage of known systems that are there and identifying all the vulnerabilities that are there. To do a data exfiltration, you got to do your reconnaissance, figure out who your key individuals are with sensitive information. You do not necessarily have to go attack the boss with that kind of stuff. All right. Even within our own department, who would you attack if you wanted to get the most amount of information?
Michelle?
You got it. Michelle, right? We would go after our administrative assistant because she has access to just about everything more than what even the chair would have, right? So you find the different person that would click and have this kind of information going in there. You may not think of them as the boss, but they're the ones that have the most keys and access to everything going around. For example, if she's processing payments and things like that, right? She's going to have access to all the financials. So we would steal that kind of information. Even if I'm trying to get to you as a student employee inside the department, we would still probably chase through her. Because if we can get her to click on that phishing email, we got a big problem. Weaponization, this is where we use the phishing emails, make them more personalized. What's a personalized phishing email you often referred to as? Does anybody know that?
Spearing?
You got it. Spear phishing. Yep. So phishing is just sending out generic emails out to everybody. If it's personalized and targeted, then you're going to get spear phishing. All right. We'll use social engineering techniques to make them look masquerading as, say, a colleague or a trusted identity, and then send those phishing emails to targeted individuals with attachments. And upon interacting, that malicious content will exploit vulnerabilities in the system. All right. When we get access on a system, we want to try to do lateral movement, right? That means we're trying to stay here. We're not trying to go up to the core and take over the whole network. We're trying to see what other PCs are laterally in the network, right? So you guys have all seen the network topology, right? We come down from the switch. We want everything laterally, anything connected on that switch, so to speak. So we'll identify other resources or systems that are within reach on that network, mapping out their internal infrastructure. This is where you would use tools like ZenMap or some of the others to figure out what's out there on the network. Then we would try to use privilege escalation. This is exploiting any kind of vulnerability. The goal is to gain higher escalated privileges on some system. Doesn't matter which one it is. So maybe the IT guy came and worked on the printer, right? And he left it logged in to his account because he was doing maintenance. We would hack through the printer, get the IT credentials. Now we could go back to any of the PCs and see if those same credentials work. They do. Now we have privilege escalation on the system itself. Maybe they used RDP to come in and service you because your laptop or something was broken and they used a remote session. You gave them escalated privileges. They just forgot to take it off when they were done. Great way to get into the system. Credential access, we could capture and leverage credentials from compromised systems or through techniques like password cracking. So if we can't escalate, maybe we can capture the table and just crack the passwords. And things like Windows, that was very easy to do back in the day, Windows XP to even a little higher after that. NTLM, everything was in 7-byte chunks, meaning all I had to do was solve 7 characters in a row. Didn't matter how long your password was. I would solve this 7 characters, this 7 characters, this 7 characters, and I could put that all together. It was actually pretty easy. And so what we did back then was we used things like rainbow tables, which had every permutation of every 7 characters out there. So whether it was numbers, letters, special characters, didn't matter. We had an entire table, think an Excel sheet with every single answer. Then we would hash that And then all we had to do was do a lookup. When we pulled the password out of your table, we would just take your hash and see what matched, right? We didn't even have to crack your password. All we're doing is trying to see which hashes matched. Once we did that, we had an immediate lookup. So it was very, very easy to do. And all of that stored on about a CD for those lookup tables. Actually, it was about a DVD. So we could walk up to your computer, reboot it, boot it off the DVD. It would go into a certain environment where we could pull down the cam table outside of Windows being booted up. And within a couple seconds, it would do a lookup in the table and give us back the password. Or we could change it, one or the other. So pretty crazy. These days, that's a little harder to do it in that realm, but the tools are getting pretty easy to use. The other thing is, well, sometimes we don't even have to crack passwords. You will do like the form of equivalent of like a cookie, right? You go to a website, it knows it's you the next time it comes back. Same thing here. We would take the hash of what you're doing and we could do techniques like passing the hash. We never even have to know your password, but we can just pass the hash through like we're using it. It immediately authenticates us and lets us into the system. All right. So an apt in this realm is going to talk about advanced persistent threats. This is something like what begins with a spear phishing campaign and exploits the human vulnerabilities. The goal is to get this to be a persistent connection to us so that we can sit there and mitigate or have full-on access at any time we need to. Remember, most attacks don't happen right away and they don't scam themselves right away. It takes weeks and months and sometimes even years to attack fully into a system. The less you get seen, the better off you are. So having opportunity is where most of these cyber attacks can be thwarted. We have certain security measures like outdated weak passwords, unencrypted, that kind of stuff. Unpatched systems, this is why patching is so important. Does anybody know what day of the week we typically do most patches?
Monday.
No.
Just guess.
Tuesday. Tuesday is the Windows Update Patch and Vulnerability System, so a lot of them align with Tuesdays. So if you go home tonight, get an update, and your computer crashes on Wednesday, you can assume that that was probably a Windows update that went awry. And that's way more common than you would like to think. Right? So if you ever think about that, if Wednesday shows up, your laptop doesn't boot up that morning, something seems wonky, it was probably a Windows update from the night before. Hopefully you have backups and you can revert in front of that. I've had to repair, I don't know how many from that exact thing.
Just use Linux.
Including my own laptop. Sure. Social engineering, obviously we know that we can attack people by getting them to trick us and give us information. That has become way more prevalent than it ever has in the past, right? You guys are putting so much data out there now, whether it's TikTok, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. You guys are putting enough of data about you that you guys can find that and use that in some social engineering technique. Right? Good thing is a lot of people are more educated now and they know what to look for, hopefully. There again, we hope they aren't because we're all wanting jobs, right? For us, keep making mistakes, right? All right, misconfigurations. These are improperly configured systems or opportunities for people to get in through open ports or excessive user privileges. A lot of software go out there and go, oh, I need admin access. No, you don't. And so a lot of, you'll see this at like hospitals and such, where they're installing, say, a heart rate monitor, right? Simple heart rate monitor, but it needs internet access. And all the IT staff are like, why does the heart rate monitor need IT access? Well, it needs to phone home back to our services. Why? Why would a simple heart rate monitor need to phone back home for a software update? It's just monitoring a heart. Not like we need to change a lot of software. It doesn't interface with anything. It just needs to connect to the internet to phone home. That's a huge loophole in all of their stuff. And they're getting more and more fierce about medical equipment like that and a bunch of other things that really have no business being back out on the internet. Even your cameras now, your light bulbs, everything has an internet connection. Not a lot of that is secure. That's why they make those cheap apps that you guys get. So when you buy the light bulb from Amazon and you get a pack of 4 and it's all Wi-Fi controlled, great. But the app that they're using was probably made in the most least secure way possible because it always has to have access back to your Wi-Fi. So you're opening some back door to go to some centralized server so that the app communicates with the server at all times, right? Which means you have some back door over here in order for that to work. Trust me, they're not using that back door to turn on your Wi-Fi bulb. They're doing other stuff. Other vulnerabilities, we talked about software. You could have software flaws like buffer overflows, SQL injection, cross-site scripting. That's pretty common now. Hardware vulnerabilities, this could be weaknesses in processors and memory and peripherals being plugged in. Configuration vulnerabilities, and obviously human vulnerabilities, as we are the weakest link due to factors like lack of awareness, susceptibility, and inadequate security training. All right. Those are all the weaknesses. A lot of this likes to repeat itself and just show it to you in a graph form and then paragraph form, right? So a practical example here is an opportunity on an e-commerce website. The website is using outdated software and plugins. The user data is stored without encryption. User authentication mechanisms are weak, and we use simple passwords with no multi-factor authentication. Security patches and updates are not being applied promptly, and employees lack general security awareness of phishing attacks and other social engineering techniques. So we got all these vulnerabilities, we got all these weaknesses. Now that attacker is going to go in and find those exploits, right? So they're going to either attack the unencrypted user data, they're going to send spear phishing emails for credentials, lots of those different services as you see across there. But if you follow the line going across, you can see how it's going to exploit each one of those opportunities. And the bad part is we only need one of those to get in, right? On the blue side, which is you guys, you have to patch all those holes, but an attacker just needs one of those in order to get in. Once they're in, they're in. Online banking services, very similar. They're going to have a bunch of different techniques. So if they're lacking HTTPS, which I don't know how they would exist anymore if that was the case. User accounts are using weak authentication, no multi-factor authentication. How many people love multi-factor, right? No, everybody hates multi-factor. Put your hand back down. It's a nightmare. It works great when it works, but then you could be also like my son who ran over his phone this last weekend with a golf cart, and guess where all his multi-factor for getting into Duo was? On the cell phone. So second week of class, can't email the instructor, partly because he doesn't remember the instructor's name, but I have to have that conversation with him later. He gets to listen to this recording in 4 years. It'll be great.
What did he end up doing?
He had to have dad go figure out who his instructor was.
But like for his Duo stuff, is there?
Oh, there's nothing he could do for the time being until he can get a hold of Tiger Tech. But on a holiday weekend, you can imagine how that
Oh
went.
my God.
What happened with Tiger Tech?
That was my son, ran over his phone. And so he didn't have access to his Duo. Smart guy. All right. Vulnerabilities. I think we are beating a dead horse at this point, and you guys now get new ways of seeing the same information that they presented 10 times. All right. Let's see if there's anything useful in here. All right. So this one, the company is using a CRM software. The vendor releases a security patch to address a critical vulnerability. The unpatched CRM software may allow the attackers to have access to sensitive data. Here's how that can work. The hackers find the outdated software, identify potential targets, including the website. They will use exploitation in order to have access to the public tools that are out there. Once in, attackers will execute commands, upload scripts, or manipulate CRM data. Most of them will set up persistence, in which case they'll set up backdoors. This is your command and control network, and ensure they have continued access even after patching or rebooting. And that stolen data is now taken for financial gain or even a future cyber attack. Lots of examples that are in here. I encourage you guys to kind of read through those because when you get to the quizzes and some other stuff, that's where it comes in. A lot of times you're going to have things on an impact here on the data breach, as you guys have seen with your credit cards, et cetera. They all have to notify you now. So it leads to lawsuits, remediation, and even lost trust with decreased sales. When you guys are doing this for other companies, you have to feel that impact. And so that's part of your attack plan is who you are going to alert and who are going to be handling those kind of things on the outside. So if you are a sales company, how's the PR relations going to be, right? How in PR are they going to spin it in order to make this a positive? Or they're going to at least alert all the people, like changing a Cracker Barrel logo. Don't do that. Threats and attacks. We got viruses, Trojans, ransomware. I think, is anybody not familiar with any of these that are up here? And it's okay if you're not. I'm asking questions because it means whether or not you've been exposed to any of these that you have not seen in life. Whaling, yep. So whaling is basically a phishing attack that's meant for targeting executives, right? You're going after the dean or you're going after the CEO so that you can grab stuff off there. Special spear phishing, we call it whaling. The fish got bigger.
Cross-site scripting.
Yep. So cross-site scripting is one that we don't think about, but it really just injects scripts into web pages to do session hijacking. We'll do a little bit of that. On the attacker side, you would use things like Burp Suite in order to do cross-site scripting attacks. A lot of that is I log into a website, I close the website, I come back to the website, and it still has me logged in, right? So it's saved a cookie, it's got some kind of information inside of there, and now I can capture that cookie and see if I can extract a username or password out of it. That's a lot of what you'll see for cross-site. Good question. Anything else? The SQL injection stuff is cool, but you don't see it as much anymore. It was easy to do, and you guys will actually do that in some of the labs this week. A lot of it got patched up. Most of it was centered around PHP and access to databases through PHP. Nobody should be using PHP anymore. It's pretty much a dead language. And even then, in later versions of PHP, they fixed that. They started sanitizing their inputs. It's always bad to do lookups based off what a user puts in, right? So you don't want to go take your database. If I do a Google search for JSON, I want to make sure that I'm actually putting in JSON instead of a bunch of commas or equal signs or something else inside of there. I should be wiping all that out. Okay. You guys will learn about that in the labs. Let's see. Those all look like the same that we've been working before. So how can we mitigate some of those cyber threats? We have a depth and defense or defense and depth. Which is just adding multiple layers of security controls, right? So having our firewalls, having antivirus software, having intrusion detection systems, access controls where people can't have access, both physical and virtual within different systems in order to mitigate those attacks. The biggest one should have been user awareness training, making sure people go through this. This is why you guys all have to go through it at Fort Hays. Vulnerability management, making sure that we're regularly scanning and patching systems, prioritizing risk assessment, and mitigating those potential threats. This should be like a weekly thing. On weekly Tuesdays, you guys do a check, find out what needs patched, and then you go through patch management. All right. Incident response planning. This is to develop and maintain an incident response plan so that you guys can be effective. Who's going to be responding to different incidents, data breaches, malware infections, and denial of service attacks. You will need some form of threat intelligence. This is what you guys are going to deploy here in the second half, where we have something like a SIME or an industry collaboration. You're pulling information from other people. You need to understand how to do threat intelligence. And then secure development practices, making sure that you are adopting secure coding, conduct reviews, and use testing to identify vulnerabilities in software development. A lot of people will put environment variables in their system and then commit that to GitHub or some local Git, right? And all of a sudden, all your credentials are out there. So if you guys have taken 601 with me, Advanced Python, that's the first thing I tell you to do is not put your API keys inside your Python files, because GitHub will immediately start contacting people and revoking your API keys through XYZ vendor. Because people are just testing, right? You commit and then you commit and oops, I just committed my key out there. By the time you can get out there and shut it down, a lot of times those API keys are expired now. So good or bad?
If you accidentally do commit it, is it better to like take down the whole repository versus like trying to delete the commit?
No, because your code is probably something you were sharing with people. You just didn't want to share your API key. So in that case, just go and revoke your API key with whoever is the vendor and then start requesting for another one.
Oh, okay.
The good ones have a process for that. The bad ones do not. And we've already found some the other day in 601 that was like, no, you contact us, we'll renew it. Yeah, by the time that happens, they've already beat up my account and probably charged thousands of dollars worth of API requests. So. All right. These are just, again, different types of attacks that go through here. I'm not going to go through every single example. This man in the middle harvesting attack, this is a lot where once they gain access to the system, they start listening for packets. They start pulling in a bunch of extra data. Okay. See, you talk bad on Microsoft and all of a sudden things go south. Well, I guess we were done with that PowerPoint.
Hope it's actually gone.
I think we were pretty close to being done. Examples. Yeah. Different types of attacks. Okay, let's go back into that. There we go.
Only halfway.
What's that?
Only halfway.
We're close. We're close.
Yeah.
We're almost there. All right. So network-based attacks. This is when, for example, somebody does DNS spoofing, also known as DNS cache poisoning. And this is where this is a network-based cyber attack where the attacker manipulates your DNS request to redirect to malicious websites or intercept sensitive information. So you send that DNS request out for commercebank.com. I say commercebank.com is actually this website. So I'm capturing all of your DNS requests and sending it off to my website as opposed to the real one.
Would you have that hosted on your own like web server, basically?
You could, yeah. You could just host it locally. You could be sending it off to something in the Amazon cloud, grab their credentials, tear it down immediately, right? Then when they refresh, it ends up sending it back to the regular one. And all of a sudden you realize you had to log in twice for some reason. Seems goofy. Change your password, all right? There's lots of evasion techniques that attackers will do, including randomizing the timing of their attacks, use different IP addresses, employ advanced obfuscation methods in order to make it challenging for security systems to detect and block. That's usually the thing with like denial of service based attacks and such is they're coming from so many different places that I can't add every IP address into the firewall and block it. Not to mention they're probably coming from legitimate services that have been taken over. And now I'm adding them into my firewall to be blocked when users now can't access the system. All right, application-based attacks. This comes into the cross-site scripting. So different kinds of that is either reflected cross-site scripting, stored, or DOM-based. This is where an attacker will send a phishing email with a malicious link to a website. The script will get executed when they run it, and the user will steal the credentials and the user clicks on that link and tries to log in. Another way of doing that is to have the user steal the session cookies, kind of what I was talking about before, from the user. The user then goes and logs into whatever XYZ forum post. That script then gets executed and then sends that information back to the attacker itself, posting the script out there on that website. This one is going to be a DOM-based one, which if you guys are familiar with JavaScript, this is where the attacker will modify a URL parameter, including malicious code. The code gets executed on the attacker, gets access to the credentials, and then the user clicks on that and grabs all the information, sends it back. All right. The idea on all of those is you have to craft some kind of malicious payload. whether you guys are writing those malicious payloads or you're using generic ones available off the internet. Is there a problem? What is the problem with using the malicious ones that are out there on the internet?
They're malicious already.
You got it. They're basically, most of them are identified already. So good firewall systems are already going to have things in place to block that, right? Does anybody ever watch Mr. Robot on Netflix? That's some homework for this class. Go watch Mr. Robot, right? Ignore the drug use part. Let's leave that out of it. But it's very interesting as to how much of that stuff directly pertains to this class.
You know where they got a lot of the background for that? The Snowden leak.
Ah, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, actually.
I can't watch
Is it a cartoon kind of?
No, it's a action series that used to be on USA for a long
It's
time.
not,
Actually,
it's,
real quick.
I'm just literally imagining a little like robot. I don't know.
No, Mr. Robot was the name of an IT shop in the
But just so you're aware, if any of the students in this class want to work for the government, they can't watch that show.
Oh, really? Okay,
Like, I can't watch that show. I legally cannot watch that show.
good to know.
Can you explain why?
So if you,
Without giving away.
no, I can actually, no, we're allowed to talk about it. So I had a top secret security clearance. I did work at the NSA.
Mhm.
Because the Snowden leaks, I can't ever look if anything Snowden leaked. Because I was cleared to certain programs, like
Okay.
top secret and higher, right? But he leaked programs that I wasn't cleared to. And because I had a security clearance for them, I had one. I wasn't allowed to know about them because I'm not cleared to them. So I couldn't ever look at his leaks. If you ever want to work for the federal government and do IT or security stuff like cyber stuff, and you watched Mr. Robot, they'll assume that you're trying, like, I know this is stupid. They'll assume you watched it so you can get in there and do what Snowden did.
Huh.
Could you just?
Now, if you watched it, like, if you
don't
watched
tell me
it-
watched it.
If you watched it when it came out and you're younger, they don't care. But like me, if I go watch it now and I've wanted to get a security
Sus.
clearance, they're like, oh, you're only coming back to get security clearance because you want to do it Snowden. Because I know how Snowden got everything. I know how Snowden happened. Like, that was a bear. Trust me, everyone in the intelligence community got a briefing on Edward Snowden. Boy, did we get a lot of briefings. So like, I know, that's why I can't ever look up his stuff, right? So
I just assume anything public is just public availability.
if you had a
Publicly
clearance or you
available.
have one, it might be public, but you're not cleared to it. So if you ever get a security clearance and someone leaks something, you're legally not allowed to watch it or look at it. Now, you're all young enough that if you watched it, you're like for class, like if the professors watch it, you're like, cool, I'm gonna watch it. And like all you do is tell them like, I took cybersecurity classes and realized I hated Snowden. That's like I know everything was terrible. But I will tell you this, like Mr. Robot, because I've watched enough of Mr. Robot before I knew I couldn't,
Right.
that it's very good.
It's good.
You should absolutely watch it because the stuff they do in Mr. Robot is stuff that you will do in your career.
It's on Netflix.
It is.
I want to watch the rest of it. And actually, I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And
Just don't tell the government.
the
like
polygraph
the
will
rest of
very
us.
much catch you. They'll say, have you ever watched anything, or like, did you ever look up, like, I can tell you this much, they'll ask you, did you ever look up that stuff? And the polygraph will know if you did or not. As much as I hate polygraphs, they will know.
That implies I remember doing it 8 years from now.
They'll ask you, have you ever done it? And they'll stare at you, like, have you ever done it? And you're like, maybe once. Okay, cool. That's a yes. But like, I'm not giving anything away. Like, that's not.
No.
But
Nope.
just be aware that show is very good.
That's what I mean. As I'm watching, I'm going, that's one of the first times that's actually accurate. That's not made up. That's accurate.
And it's because of,
Pieces that came out.
yeah.
That's
I wish I could look up the Snowden things. I want to know what he talked about, but I can't. So
all right. So that's again what you're going to see in these different payloads. And the reason I mentioned that is in like one of the last episodes I just watched, they got caught right away because they used standard payloads that were available out there on the internet
what were
as
they
opposed to
doing?
crafting their own.
What were they doing?
Nothing.
Damn it. If you tell me about it, I can know.
Oh, okay. In that case, they were attacking a HVAC system.
Neat.
So, which may or may not have been a thing that happened to Target back in the day, right? So, all right. Let's see here. Actually, no, that wasn't the HVAC system.
If you show clips in class, it's for educational reasons. Just so you know.
Well, that's good to know because there again, if it's of interest to you, I may show some of those clips because it's interesting just how accurate they really took the time to
If
make
you
it work.
put a question on one of the quizzes about it, then I have to watch it.
Done.
I'm being serious, like that's the way around.
Well, good, done. I can do that. Now homework for you guys to watch TV. No, just kidding. All right, let's see here. Where else can we lead off on this? Application-based attacks. This is the same thing that we've done before. They now have ways of implementing security headers, so you can have things like HSTS, which is the HTTP strict transport protocol to enhance your web application security. You can also deploy WAFs or web application filters to monitor HTTP traffic and detect and prevent any cross-site scripting attacks. Host-based attacks, this is usually where it stretches out for quite a while. All right, so social engineering starts in month 1. They're going to try to figure out who's the best attack vector, get information about you, maybe take you out for a beer or a drink or dinner, grab as much information as they can. From that point, they're going to deploy some kind of malware. This would be anything unknowingly downloaded malware, USB drives out in the parking lot. Don't ever plug those in. They actually showed that in Mr. Robot too. Like, how silly can you be? And it was a guy, it was a prison guard at a prison. Like, red flag?
Rubber ducky now.
It's a red flag. Actually, that's the one that got identified because that's what it was. So yeah, at the prison, they used a known exploit because they had short amount of time.
The cables and the rubber duckies are the two big ones.
Yeah.
The OTG cables.
Those are fun.
Hack5.com.
Exploitation of any kind of zero-day vulnerability. Then you're going to try to work on lateral movement, again, going slowly so you don't get checked. Then looking for data exfiltration. How are you going to get that data out of their systems? Cover all your tracks, clear the logs, clear everything else you can possibly get in, and then send that information out to the public, all right? If that's what their ultimate goal is. All right, insider attacks. This usually occurs when an individual is looking in an organization. It could be employees, contractors, business partners, etc., looking to compromise. Again, this could be known and unknown, like you unknowingly did something like this. It could also be very much known where they're trying to steal information on the inside. So whether it's malicious attacks, espionage, privilege abuse, meaning here's my credentials, go log in kind of thing. Insider trading, unintentional insider threats. This is going to be something like falling for a phishing or misconfiguring a setting. You fat fingered something in there and left something open. Data exfiltration, sabotage, and credential theft. Examples of something like this would be data theft by an IT administrator, and a disgruntled IT admin faces financial strain, implicitly copies sensitive customer data, including personal information, credit cards, etc., using escalated privileges. And that's because they want to sell it on the dark web for some money. All right, don't do that. Product blueprint leakage. This is if you're a research scientist, you could leak those things out, or a phishing campaign initiated by a customer service representative. Let's see, malware, again, is the generic term for viruses, worms, trojans, ransomware. All of that falls under the umbrella, as well as spyware, adware, keyloggers, botnets, etc. Does anybody not know what any of those are? Yeah, it's okay if you don't.
What's botnet?
Yep, so a botnet is going to be a centralized server that controls a bunch of different computers out there. They're kind of bots or zombies. This could be like me taking over the camera in your house or that light bulb that we were talking about and using that as an attack vector to go attack somebody else's system. All right, so it goes and infects a bunch of light bulbs out there. There again, doesn't have to be a powerful computer, it could be a light bulb, but if it starts sending a bunch of packets over to a web server and I've got several thousand of these things doing it, or even millions of these doing it, that's where you start taking down big services. You can also buy access to those services. So you don't have to create your own botnet. You could just pay to be on a botnet and then take down the services. That is what actually happened to Hayes High here a couple years ago. The student just forked over a credit card and bought a botnet to take down the.
How much does that cost that student?
Don't know what that ended up resolving out to. But at the end of the day, they were at least doing it somewhat smart because it was like originating from the inside, right? And so it was bouncing from different IP addresses. So it was hard to find because it was all originating. Because that's just it. To start one of those, you have to be on the inside and say, attack me, basically. So it all knows where to funnel everything in. All they were looking to do was take down Blackboard, is my understanding, so that they didn't have to take an exam.
Understandable.
I strongly wouldn't encourage going down that road.
Just run over your phone.
Understandable crash out.
Let's see. Ways to do distribution of this kind of stuff could be done through phishing, drive-by downloads, infected software, and removable media. Prevention and mitigation. By the way, this like drive-by download thing is super easy, right? You just put up a free internet service, like you are a hosted coffee shop, and people connect to it. Even if they realize, no, I don't want to do that, they already pulled up the website, right? You could make it to where they have to click to see the user agreement. All right, well, when they clicked, they agreed to more than just the user agreement. Worst part is you could literally write it in most user agreements because nobody reads it. If you click I agree, you allow me to have access to all of your bank accounts and information. Thanks. How many of you guys read your terms and conditions? Well, I know you do because you're in the background.
I read those things. I use AI too. I'm like, tell me about this. What am I agreeing to?
You should really try to scan through your terms and conditions these days. It gets ugly, ugly, ugly. And a lot of big companies are throwing some big weight behind it, right? So we've all talked about the Broadcom and VMware side of the house. Broadcom is legally contracted to make sure that they do this kind of stuff when they bought VMware, right? Do you think they care? No. They just, nope, we're turning the service off. Go ahead, sue us. If you're big enough, great, try suing us.
Too bad it's an arbitration.
Right, exactly. There's arbitration over here, or you got to go through a bunch of other
Delaware.
pieces. Yeah, exactly. In the middle of nowhere. That's the biggest one you'll find in your terms and service is the arbitration. Where it's going to be held in court. Do you have to pay to be in that court? That kind of stuff. That's usually where it hurts the most.
Rental car agreements too.
Yeah. Yeah. I've actually seen some of them. Unfortunately, here again, we just all sign, call it a day, and hope that nothing happens. Something always happens. All right. Prevention and mitigation. There again, making sure we're running kind of antivirus or anti-malware software. We deploy some real firewalls in there. It doesn't have to always be the high-end Palo Altos. We can do some things with some cheap, free open source stuff, or some of the ones you guys have. Just lock it down a little bit and make sure you're monitoring some of the traffic. User education, software updates, network segmentation again, and making sure we're always doing regular backups. All right. Phishing and social engineering. I think this is the one you guys probably know the most, as you guys are all getting spam emails asking for information. Trust me, you have never won a free $100 gift card. Okay. It's not going to happen. Let it go. If you guys do have lottery numbers from the other night, please forward those my direction. I think we're up to 1.3 billion, so I'll cut you in.
Wait, you're saying if
What's
I
that?
Is that in
Like
terms
half
of-
of
is
that.
in the terms
Well,
of-
you get a half, you'll get a little bit under that.
It's a little under
So you're
half,
saying
but
if
there
I
are
win
numbers.
$1.3 billion, I should give it to you and you'll give me half, or if I keep it, I get the whole amount.
Sometimes they call me Uncle Sam, and you didn't like working for Uncle Sam, so I can be your Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam's already gonna get his taxes first. Also take the annuity, not the lump sum.
I'm not gonna live long enough for that. Not gonna live long enough for that. Not to mention
They will. Like, we know, I'll take the lump sum, but
Yeah.
take the annuity otherwise.
What does that mean?
Annuity means that basically take the amount and they break it up by 20 years, and every year you get 1/20th the amount, but it comes as like every month.
Yeah, so it'll start out with like 3,000 a month payments or 3
$4,000 a
million.
month,
Yeah, at this point, it'd be like $3 million
But
payments.
the reason is you actually end up getting more because right now you don't make as much money, so you pay less in taxes. And then as you get older, you make more money, but the thing is like the annuities, like you'll get like 100,000 a year from it, and you pay taxes on 100,000. If you take 1.3 billion, you pay taxes on 1.3 billion.
makes sense.
The lump sum is also usually only 50 to 80% of the pots.
That's because of taxes.
Yeah.
Some is taxes, some is that's just the way they will pay it out. So like Powerball will only pay out this if you take a lump sum.
And
Versus
it's been
the full
proven
amount.
if you take the lump sum of most, the majority would take the lump sum, end up burning through it so fast. Because they're like, I have $1.3 billion, I'll never run out of money. Where if you get the annuity, you're like, I'm getting $100,000 to $200,000 a year in just for breathing and fogging a mirror. So
Now, the only other part of that is taxes always go up, they never go down. So you're gonna pay more in taxes over time on the
but
annuity.
but yeah, that's so it's a balance. But we're old enough where if I go into $1.3 billion, like all y'all school is free. I'll just do that. I'm like, all right, here's your student loans paid off, and then I'll keep the rest. Because if I gift it like that, I don't pay taxes on it.
Like Scott's Tots from the office or something.
I do what I can. All right, social engineering, there again, I think you guys are pretty up to speed on this side. Phone call impersonations, physical access, security awareness training. There again, I think most of you guys understand social engineering.
Yeah, you just did let's say. Give me half.
Maybe.
Do I get an A if I do that?
Ooh, we are on a recording, sir. Check in with me later.
For every dollar you give me, it's 1 point of credit. Got it. Okay.
Ian, you got any questions?
No, I don't.
I didn't hear you there, but I'm gonna assume that was a no.
No,
Oh, there we go.
it's correct.
Awesome. Anybody in here have any questions?
After the recording.
After recording. Enjoy YouTube.